This course is Introduction to Philippine Criminal Justice System.
Hi, it's me again. I hope you already know me. This lesson is part of your prelims topics. I hope you are still good. So, let us start. We are on the last lesson in our Module 2, the Philippine Criminal Justice System Flow Model. In this lesson, you will understand how the criminal justice system in our country works by understanding its flow and giving emphasis on what each pillar is consist of. Let us first have a review on the pillars of the Philippine criminal justice system and their main concepts. At the end of the lesson, you should be able to determine the flow of the criminal justice system in the Philippines. In all our lessons, I have some few reminders. First, you need to stay focused. Listen to the lesson and understand what is the lecture all about. The second reminder is, you need to have your pen, paper, and module ready. Because one of the most effective ways in order to grasp knowledge is to take down notes. I am not telling you to write it all down, but you need to focus on the main idea, as well as it will serve as an aid in reviewing your lessons. And the third reminder is, if you have any questions, you can post it in our group or in our educational platform. These are all the contents of the presentation. It has the lesson, learning objectives, the discussion, learning activity, learning assessment, and learning sources. Are you ready? By clicking the button, let's start. The first pillar is the law enforcement pillar. Their work consists in the prevention and control of crimes, enforcement of laws, and effect the arrest of offenders, including the conduct of lawful searches and seizures to gather necessary evidence so that a complaint may be filed with the prosecutor's office. The second pillar is the prosecution arm of the government. It is mandated to uphold the rule of law, and their mission is to maintain peace and order in the community through the delivery of prompt prosecutorial services, that is, the investigation of crimes and the prosecution of criminals. There are two prefatory stages in criminal actions. The first stage pertains to police activities, the initial investigation of the crimes reported to or discovered by police authorities or is being done by the first pillar, which is the law enforcement. The second prefatory stage is the preliminary investigation. It is the stage at which the prosecutor evaluates the findings of the police to determine if prosecution of the suspect in court is warranted. We will talk more about the preliminary investigation in Unit 3, Lesson 3.2. They say that the prosecutor in whatever land or clime holds a very important and powerful office in the CJS. He is the decision whether to prosecute a case or not. He may not prosecute or decide not to prosecute if he feels that the evidence is insufficient to gain a conviction, yet he may hold the case for further action if and when warranted. Subject only to a few constraints, he determines will be formally tried and for what offenses, and whether to dismiss charges or offer an accused an opportunity to plea bargain for a reduced charge, or he may recommend lighter sentence. It is he, in effect, who determines which case will ever reach the courts for adjudication and who can terminate the processing of any case anywhere in the system. But powerful as the prosecutor may seem to be in the Philippines and in any other country, yet he cannot successfully prosecute cases alone or render justice to anyone without the collaboration of other components of the criminal justice system. For the prosecutor cannot successfully prove his case without the evidence gathered by the apprehending and the investigating police officer or the law enforcement agent. Neither may he able to establish his case in court in the absence of fair, competent and independent-minded judge. Nor would his work and that of the judge end in the conviction of the felon, for without the dedication to duty of prison and custodial officers, and the rehabilitating assistance rendered by the community, said felon or criminal would keep coming into the system and a burden to society. For like the bow and arrow, the prosecution and the other components of the criminal justice would be useless without the other. So once the prosecution pillar proves that there is a probable cause or a well-founded belief that a crime happened and someone is responsible for it, then he will file an information in the court. The definition of information will be tackled later on. But anyways, the third pillar of the CJS is the court pillar, and it is the forum where the prosecution is given the opportunity to prove that there is strong evidence of guilt against the accused. It is also in the court that the accused is given his day to disprove the accusation against him. The constitutional presumption is the innocence of any person accused of a crime unless proven otherwise. This means that the court must determine the guilt of the accused beyond reasonable doubt. For example, based on the strength of the evidence of the prosecution, if there is a reasonable doubt that the accused committed the crime, then he has to be acquitted. Once the court proves the person is guilty, then the person will go to the next pillar, which is the corrections. It takes over once the accused after having found guilty and is meted out the penalty for the crime he committed. The purpose of correction is to make the person or the criminal rehabilitated or reformed, meaning, since he committed a crime, then he needs to pay for that in terms of imprisonment or other means just to correct his wrongdoing, so that in case that when he goes back to the community, then he will not do it again since he was reformed and he will become a law-abiding citizen. Once the person finish or serve his punishment, then he will be reverted to the community where he originally came from. Now, the community has a role of accepting the person who just came from the corrections. We have this notion that when a person who just came out from a prison, for example, is not a good guy, just like we are branding them like ex-convict or ex-con or ex-criminal, mamamatay tao, magnanakaw, and stuff. For example, may kapitbahay kayong kakalaya lang. Since galing siya sa kulungan at ang mindset ng tao ay masama siyang tao since nakakulong siya, then i-judge na siya na masamang tao. But come to think of it, the purpose of correction is to reform yung taong yun, baguhin yung tao at magsisi sa kasalanan niya. Pero di yun natutupad kasi nga merong mga members ng community na di sila tanggap. Let us explain this in this way. Ako, na bagong laya, na pinagsisihan ko kung ano yung ginawa ko, for example, sa kulungan. So, nakulong ako ng 20 years. Sabihin natin na pinagbayaran ko na yung kasalanan ko. Imagine, 20 years. So, after ng 20 years, nakalaya ako. Pero may mga nagsasabi at ayaw pa rin tumanggap sa akin sa community. Sinasabi na kriminal ako, masamang tao, ex-convict, at lahat ng negative na bagay na pwede nilang masabi sa akin. Papasok ngayon sa utak ko, pinagsisihan ko na yung krimen sa loob ng 20 years. Nagbago na ako, pero ganun pa rin yung tingin sa akin ng tao. So, ano kaya ang pwedeng tumakbo sa utak ko? So, pwede kong isipin na buti pa sa kulungan, kahit alam nilang nakagawa ako ng krimen, tanggap nila ako. Kaysa dito sa community na nagbago na ako, pero ganun pa rin yung tingin nila sa akin. So, possible or posible kong gawin. Gagawa na lang ulit ako ng krimen, total ganito rin naman ang trato sa akin. And that, ladies and gentlemen, the person will go back over the same process, over and over again. So, nakalaya ako, gumawa ako ng krimen, ipaprosecute ako, decision ng korte, pag guilty, pwedeng kulungan ulit. Babalik na naman ako sa kulungan, then pag after ma-serve ng penalty, babalik ako sa community. At kapag ganun ulit yung tanggap sa akin ng community at hindi ko mapigilan or wala akong means para pigilan yung mga negative na sinasabi sa akin, then paulit-ulit lang akong papasok doon sa criminal justice system. So, unang na-realize natin is that yung purpose ng correction is nabaliwala. Kasi technically, di nagbago yung tao. Kasi gumawa pa rin siya ng krimen. Sabihin man natin na na-provoke lang siya ng community, kaya niya nagawa yun. Pero kahit na, kasi meron din namang tao na kahit anong gawin mo, talagang labas-pasok sila ng kulungan. Ibang usapan naman yon. At meron din namang tao na hindi papadala sa sinasabi ng community. So, you see class, the community is important in accepting the people who just came from the corrections. Kasi if you're not going to help them, then they will go to the same process of the criminal justice system role model. Now, let us study this photo. I'll give you some time for you to read the contents of the diagram. And I know it is very small, but I will discuss it later on. I just want you to have a glance of it first. Alright, so this is the diagram of the Philippine criminal justice process. So, pag-aaralan natin ito ngayon. So, since this is the diagram of the CJS, then meron itong mga pillars. Ano yung mga pillars na yun? We have the law enforcement pillar, the prosecution pillar, the courts pillar, and the corrections pillar. Ma'am, bakit apat lang? Because the community pillar is in here. So, this is the community pillar. Pag-aaralan natin ito ngayon. Okay. The first box is a person who has violated a law. Okay? Ito yung una nating instance. A person who has violated a law. Once a person violated a law, then he will be apprehended by the police or any law enforcement agency like NBI, narcotics group, or kahit na anong law enforcement agency as long he violated a law. So, sino ang gagawa nito? Ang gagawa nito ay ang law enforcement pillar. Okay? So, ito yung arrow pababa. Ngayon, meron tayong mga arrow dito. Okay? Ito yung mga arrow dito. These are the what if. Okay? Balik tayo dito. A person who violated a law, of course, will be apprehended, puhulihin ng police or sabihin natin police, for example. Ano yung papunta dito? The case may be diverted where no sufficient ground can sustain complaint against the suspect. Madadivert yung kaso kapag walang sapat na ground para ituloy yung complaint against the suspect. Okay? And then, anong mangyayari? Ang mangyayari, babalik siya sa community. It will be reverted to the community if walang ground. Pero, paano kapag meron? So, balik tayo dito. A person who violated a law will be apprehended by the police at kapag merong ground para ituloy yung kaso, then, he will be prosecuted for the alleged offense committed. Sino ang magpa-prosecute? The prosecution pillar. Ano yung nandito? Ang kaso pwedeng ma-divert where no probable cause can sustain a prosecution. Ibig sabihin, wala daw sapat na probable cause na pwedeng makapag-sustain sa prosecution. Anong mangyayari? Babalik siya sa community. Ano yung probable cause? Yung probable cause, i-discuss natin yan doon sa prosecution pillar. Pero, a probable cause is something na paniniwala ng prosecution. Sabihin natin ground kung saan merong well-founded belief that a crime has been committed. Merong talagang krimen nangyari at merong dapat managot. Okay? So, kumbaga, nag-iimbestiga din si prosecution pillar. Hindi lang si law enforcement pillar, pero nag-iimbestiga din si prosecution pillar. Yung tinatawag natin preliminary investigation. Titignan niya ngayon kung meron ba talagang sapat na basehan. Kung meron ba talagang krimen, or foul play, or wala, or meron bang dapat managot. Kasi kapag wala, babalik siya sa community. Pero kapag meron, pupunta siya sa korte. Ang tanong, ma'am, dito ba, since pumunta siya sa criminal justice process at pumasok siya sa criminal justice system, considered ba siya as criminal pag dito? Hindi. Because, ang makakapagpatunay lang na kriminal ang isang tao ay ang korte. So, kahit hinuli siya ng law enforcement, pero napansin or nakita na walang ground for complaint, babalik siya sa community, hindi siya kriminal. Kaya nga, ang tinatawag natin sa kanya ay suspect. Suspect siya. Paano pa naman pag dito, pag prosecution? Kapag bumalik siya or kapag pumunta siya dito and then nakita na walang probable cause, criminal ba siya? Hindi rin. Kasi hindi pa yun napapatunay ng korte. Ang makakapagpatunay lang if criminal ang tao ay ang korte. Okay, so dito na tayo sa process na to. Now, the prosecution finds out that there is a probable cause. Merong krimen nangyari at merong dapat panagot. Then yung taong yun pupunta sa pangatlong pillar, which is the court. Okay? Ano ang gagawin ng court pillar? Tried before the court. Lilitisin niya na. Titignan niya na dito kung yung taong yun ay guilty or not guilty. Meron ulit dito, reverted to the community. Ano yung mga paraan para makabalik siya sa community? But the case may be diverted where the evidence is not enough for conviction of the offender. Ibig sabihin, pwede siyang makabalik sa community kapag hindi sapat ang ebidensya para makulong siya. Ito yung mga sinasabi natin, yung mga hatol ng korte ay not guilty beyond reasonable doubt. Criminal ba siya, ma'am? Hindi. Kasi nga, hindi siya guilty. Babalik siya sa community. Okay? Paano kapag guilty siya? Pupunta siya ngayon sa pang-apat na pillar, which is the corrections. Anong ginagawa ng corrections? If convicted, either serve his sentence in jail or prison or is placed under probation. So, meron kasi tayong tinatawag na institutional and non-institutional correction, but we will discuss it in the correction pillar. So, basically, ang ginagawa ng correction ay parusahan siya. Hindi naman parusahan or para ma-reform din siya. Okay? Pwede siyang ikulong. Notion natin kulong. Sabihin natin kulungan. Okay? Kulungan. Ano yung what if niya? Paano siya makakabalik sa community? Makakabalik siya in case of na-serve niya na yung kanyang sentence, natapos na yung kanyang sentence, or pwede siyang nabigyan ng parole, or nabigyan siya ng pardon. Itong mga to, pag-uusapan natin in the corrections pillar. Pero sabihin naman natin nakulong, example, ang kanyang punishment dito ay pagkakakulong ng 20 years. Kapag na-serve niya ang kanyang sentence ng 20 years, then babalik siya sa community. Okay? So, ito yung ating community pillar. Kaya nga, nasabi ko doon sa mga unang topic natin, the process of criminal justice process is process of selection. Ang daming process, no? Process of selection. So, hindi porket pumasok ka dito sa law enforcement pillar ay dapat daanan mong lahat. Hindi yon. So, kaya nga meron tayong para siyang strainer, sinasala natin kung sino ba talaga yung mga dapat dumaan dito. Okay, law enforcement, prosecution, courts, pillar, and community. So, nasa community na siya. What if gumawa ulit siya ng krimen, babalik ulit siya dito. Okay, so proseso yan. Kaya nga process. Ulit-ulit. Paano kapag gumawa ulit siya ng krimen, babalik ulit siya ng law enforcement, prosecution, court, correction, and babalik siya ng community. Okay?
And that is the end of our discussion. Let's proceed to the learning activity.
Your assignment will serve as your learning activity. Your assignment for this lesson is posted in your learning management system. Your learning assessment is the quiz posted in your learning management system.
For the references used in the lesson, these are my sources. For the graphics or pictures used in this presentation, these are the internet sources.